suggesting it.
Well, that was a roundtable for Fox 11 Los Angeles with Alex Michelson leading that conversation. They were talking about the Capitol protests that happened this week, and we're going to switch gears a little bit, but get some response also on some of these headlines that have been coming out in just the last hour or so. I'm going to bring in Madeline Rivera on not only what President-elect Biden's cabinet picks look like today, but all the conversations, impeachment, blowback from Democrats about other selections. We have a lot to get to. This will be quite the conversation. Maddie, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Daytona. I'm happy to be here. I think busy is an understatement for sure. Biden had a lot of things to cover today. I mean, it began as a formal announcement of his two cabinet picks today, which is Labor Secretary and Commerce Secretary. He picked Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo for Commerce Secretary and Boston Mayor Marty Walsh for Labor Secretary. So it started out as that conversation, but it evolved to talking about impeachment, talking about vaccine distribution, and talking about a whole bunch of other things that, have been making the news lately. And there's a lot of talk about impeachment, obviously, as more Democrats and some Republicans call for it. And there were some questions about whether Biden supported that. And Biden really didn't say no, didn't say yes either. He said that he won't answer that question and he'll let Congress make the decision. He says rather that the focus should be on his inauguration, saying that is the quickest way to get Trump out of office on January 20th. He continued to condemn President Trump for supporting some of the unrest that has been developing over the last 4 years that eventually culminated in the riots that happened on the Capitol on Wednesday. So he continued to condemn Trump for that and continued to use some pretty strong language against the president. And he, interesting today, too, he also said that he agrees with President Trump, who decided today, or rather who tweeted today, that he wasn't going to the inauguration. But there's a lot more to cover, obviously, but those are just some three things that he talked about tonight, Daytona, or rather this afternoon, Daytona.
Yeah, so, obviously, Trump's not out of office yet, but he is now kicked off of Twitter as of just hours ago. That final tweet was talking about how he will not be showing up to inauguration. Have we heard any response from Biden and his team about this situation? It's amazing to think that him being off of Twitter is such a big headline for us, but this is some of the biggest breaking news that we've seen over the past couple of days, for sure.
Twitter is a big mode of communication for President Trump. It's the way he likes to communicate to the people because he feels like that's the way he can get his message out directly to the American people. So it's a big deal that he is locked out of it permanently. And I was just, reading about how this could have some repercussions for him in the future, how it could affect him being a kingmaker, as Governor Greg Abbott, Texas Governor Greg Abbott said. He says to Fox that it could be a huge crushing blow to his prospects to being a kingmaker in the future because those are his go-to platforms. Now, as for whether President-elect Biden or the rest of his team have had any reactions to Trump being locked out of Twitter, I haven't seen any within the last few minutes that I've been checking Twitter to see if there have been any reactions. I haven't seen any, but don't forget last year, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris supported Trump being banned from Twitter. So, it's interesting to see this happen now, and for sure it could have big repercussions for Trump moving forward, Daytona.
Okay, so we'll step away from the Twitter news just for a moment here because we've been hitting that quite a bit. Let's head back to the cabinet announcements. I'm curious, do you think there's going to be blowback from Democrats after Biden didn't choose Sanders to be his labor secretary?
Yes, there was a lot of talk from progressive Democrats for Biden to have a progressive member in his cabinet. So I'm sure that some people are disappointed not to see Senator Bernie Sanders on Biden's cabinet. But Biden did say that he considered Sanders for the role, but ultimately he decided that it wasn't worth losing his seat and losing a Senate majority just for Sanders to be able to take a role in his cabinet. Obviously now after the Georgia Senate runoffs, the Democrats will gain a majority in the Senate, a simple majority with, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris being the tiebreaker here. And that will be crucial for Biden moving forward because it would allow him to push through his cabinet nominations, move through with his legislative agenda. And Biden didn't think it was worth it to be able to lose the majority in the Senate just for Sanders to be able to have a role in his cabinet, Daytona.
Also at that press conference, there was a flurry of topics that were covered, especially during the reporter questions. But the transition team has said today that they support releasing nearly all available COVID-19 vaccine doses to speed up the delivery, because some are saying, hey, things are moving a lot slower than we thought. Are there any more details on that?
Yes, so the Biden-Harris transition team said today that Biden supports releasing nearly all available vaccine doses in order to speed up the delivery process. He has been critical of the Trump administration, saying they're falling well behind of their schedule of delivering vaccines to the American people. So there is some question as to whether or not that puts people at compromise when it comes to getting their second vaccine. And that is the question that someone asked that question to Biden earlier this afternoon, and Biden said he will be addressing that next week. And the Biden-Harris transition team says they expect to have more details about that next week as well. But that is a question and that is a concern that some healthcare workers have. What does this do for the rest of the people who are still waiting to get their second dose if in fact everyone is available or everyone can get the first dose of the vaccine, Daytona?
Yeah, so that was going to be one of my next questions. Looking forward into the weekend, even though weekends don't really feel like weekends anymore, they feel like weekdays, so much happens. What can we be watching for with Biden and his team?
Right, so now he's finished announcing all of his cabinet picks. So now it'll probably come down to what about his legislative agenda. Of course, coronavirus will remain a top issue for him. And obviously next week he will be talking about the vaccine distribution process. So those are some of the big headlines that we continue to see or that we are expecting to see from Biden moving forward, Daytona.
And last question for you. Obviously, impeachment is on the minds of a lot of these House members, as it seems as though they're moving forward in this process. What would that eventually mean for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as well?
Well, again, Biden didn't really answer questions on whether he supports impeachment. What he is focused on is on his inauguration on January 20th. He wants to focus on the coronavirus. He wants to focus on vaccine distribution. He wants to focus on providing economic relief to American families. He says those are his priorities. He just wants to get his legislative agenda acted on, Daytona. So that will be his priorities moving forward.
All right. Madeline Rivera out there in Wilmington, Delaware. We appreciate you being with us on this, once again, busy Friday here on News Now from Fox. Stay safe out there.
You too, Daytona. Thank you.
Well, the very latest from across the country, we have some really, really great live reports. We've had some on this Friday, mostly talking about the Biden transition and that big announcement today of his final cabinet picks. We're going to play that out for you in just a moment, but we're following these breaking headlines of President Trump